Hi everyone, we're gonna get started now if we're all settled in. So I'm just gonna give you my name's Emma.
And I'm Kennedy.
And so right now I'm just gonna give you a quick rundown about how this is going to look. So we're gonna have the wonderful Miss Stokes present her story first, and then we're gonna move into a quick Q&A. And then if we have any time after that, your advisors have been given some reflection questions. So if you have extra advisory time, you could feel free to hop into that and have some discussion.
And just a quick little rundown of who Mrs. Stokes is before we start. Nell Stokes was born and raised in one of the most segregated places in America, Montgomery, Alabama. As a young girl, she experienced continuous acts of racism. And in 1956, as a 16-year-old high school girl, Nell Stokes volunteered to help with the Montgomery bus boycott. At the age of 18, when Stokes was eligible to begin voting, she was once again faced with the same prejudice and racism that she had faced as a young girl. Today, we will hear and experience her story, voice, and power that she not only had as a young girl, but continues to have today. So, Mrs. Stokes, we invite you into the space, and you can begin whenever you feel most comfortable.
All righty, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. First, I want to thank Ms. Edwards for allowing me the opportunity to share with you today. It's indeed a pleasure and an honor to be on Zoom with you this morning as a living testimony of our history of the Jim Crow laws and the Civil Rights Movement. While preparing for my presentation, I thought it might be a great idea to know a bit about the place my voice and my story will be heard. So out of curiosity, I took the virtual tour of your 65-acre campus and viewed the beautiful space in which you learn. The tour allowed me the pleasure of envisioning the opportunities available to you as you learn and grow and become whatever you choose in your future. As you've heard, I was born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama, where life for African Americans was separate and unequal. Jim Crow laws from the 1880s into the 1960s were enforced by the majority of American states, but Alabama was one of the states that enforced those laws without impunity. The most common types of laws forbade intermarriage and ordered business owners and public institutions to keep their Black and white clientele separated. I attended Billingsley Elementary School from grades 1 through 6, Nazareth Catholic Mission from 7 and 8, and Booker T. Washington High. Billingsley was a 3-room schoolhouse with 2 grades taught in each classroom. There were 3 teachers, a principal, and a janitor. All of my teachers in elementary school were African American. In middle school, Nazareth Catholic Mission, they were white nuns. Our books and supplies had already been used when we received them. They came to us with missing or ripped pages, names written in them already, so things such as that. Like most cities, there were several segregated neighborhoods throughout the area, but they were economically mixed from the affluent to the very poor, the haves and the have-nots. We didn't need to go downtown Montgomery because everything we needed in our neighborhood, the grocery store, drugstore, doctors, dentists, clothing store, restaurant, cab companies, cleaners, and much more, was all in our neighborhood and owned and operated by African Americans. As a young child, I was unaware of the word Jim Crow, but even then, I noticed how Black folk were treated by whites, and I learned how to act based on my observations.
She's talking already.
My father worked for the L&N Railroad as a short order cook until there was a tremendous derailment of the train, and he was seriously injured. After several years of recovery, my dad was afraid to return to the job at the railroad company. He found work at odd jobs, which included the Montgomery Stockyard, which is where they slaughtered cows and prepared the meat for sale. My mother did domestic work for a white family whose back fence buttressed our back fence. They had 2 children around my age. Connie and Billy. They lived in a big house made of bricks with lots of rooms and a white picket fence. Ours was a house made of wood with 3 rooms and a chicken wire fence, which is where I spent most of my time. My parents were deathly afraid of white folk, so they made sure we stayed clear of any situation that might cause us harm. My only playmates were Connie and Billy from the time I was 2.5 years old. We played together in their backyard or mine. The year we turned 6 and entered 1st grade was a big turning point in our lives. It was the end of August when school began. I was walking to school and I spotted my friend Connie with a bunch of white kids waiting at the curb for her bus. In my excitement to see my friend, I ran over to say hi. She looked at me with anger and disgust in her face and said, "Get away from me, little nigger. Why are you talking to me?" I was stunned and disappointed. My friend had changed overnight. We had just played together the day before in our backyard. I ran away with tears in my eyes. And the Black kids laughed and called me stupid for thinking a white girl would be my friend. This was my first real encounter with racism, and it changed my life forever. We never played together again, and my mother stopped working for the family. After that encounter, I began to pay close attention to how different life was among the races. Fast forward, my 6th grade graduation was coming up. My uncle was buying me my very first brand new outfit: dress, gloves, underwear, socks, and shoes. I was so happy. It would be the first trip to a store in downtown Montgomery to buy my new white shoes because they didn't have any at the store in my neighborhood. Because I was a Black child, I couldn't try the shoes on to make sure they fit. So my mom held the shoes near my feet to get an idea of the size. She bought them. We got home, tried them on, and they were too small. That was too bad for me though, because we couldn't take them back. I just had to wear them. What I remember most about my 6th grade graduation, wearing my brand new, beautiful white outfit, is that my feet were killing me. Living in Montgomery, Alabama during the Jim Crow era was more than difficult for both adults and children. Being treated less than human with multiple indignities took a toll on everyone. The consciousness of everyday humiliation and degradation was overwhelming, but we lived our lives as best we could under the circumstances. Me personally, I was what was called a disadvantaged child. You see, both my parents were illiterate, so they were unable to help me with my schoolwork or even share advice on how to maneuver through the difficult times. Also, I was abused as a child. I was bullied and beaten by my classmates as well as kids in my neighborhood. And because of my appearance, I wasn't treated very well by most of the teachers in my school either. All the clothes and shoes I wore to school were hand-me-downs or made from flour sacks that people gave to my mother. Also, growing up in Montgomery, Alabama, I witnessed many mean and hateful incidents towards Black people, like the bus driver pulling away, leaving the person after they had paid their money to ride the bus. Men and boys stepping off the sidewalk if a white person was walking toward them, even if they had to step off in the mud. Men being beaten or slapped for not looking down when passing a white person on the street. Men just simply disappearing and later being found washed up on the banks of a river with a bullet lodged somewhere in his body. Unspeakable injustices perpetrated on human beings, and no one ever held accountable because of the Jim Crow laws of Alabama. However, I survived all of that and much more. And then it was December 5th, 1955, the first day of the bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama. On December 1st, Rosa Parks had sat down to stand up. Because of her courage, I too stood up for myself that same day. I decided that I wouldn't take another beating. I would not work as a slave while someone was being paid by the state of Alabama for my labor. So I walked away from the foster home where I lived, not knowing what was ahead, but believing that there was a better life for me. My activism began as I was walking into the headquarters for transportation of those needing rides during the bus boycott. I volunteered there for several weeks, cleaning, sweeping, emptying trash cans, picking up lunches and other jobs as assigned. I was unknowingly participating in American history. Prior to that, though, I participated in a bit of civil disobedience. As I walked home from school through the Alabama State College campus, a few of us bought a dozen eggs and threw them at the empty buses. This action was short-lived. We just wanted to get rid of a little steam and a bit of youthful frustration. And besides, we only had enough money for 1 dozen eggs. As a 16-year-old, I stood in the midst of history without knowledge or forethought, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. During that time, I just wanted to be a part of something, anything, never realizing that the Montgomery bus boycott would change the course of our history. The atmosphere in the city during that time was filled with pride, determination, hope, excitement, and a bit of fear. No one rode the buses and people pitched in whatever manner they could. It took tremendous courage to persevere because bad things happened to a lot of people. The leaders, Dr. King, Reverend Abernathy, and Mr. Nixon's homes were bombed. Some men and women lost their jobs. However, no matter what happened, people stayed the course and made the ultimate sacrifice for justice. It seemed that every Black person in the city of Montgomery played a role in the success of the boycott. And on November 13, 1956, the United States Supreme Court affirmed that Alabama's state and local laws requiring segregation on buses was unconstitutional. And on December 21st, 1956, the buses were integrated. A boycott called to make a statement about injustice lasted for 381 days and changed history. Another of Alabama's laws that affected me personally was voting. Because of my involvement in the bus boycott, I learned the importance of becoming a registered voter. In Montgomery, however, in order to register vote, if you were African American, you had to take a test, which cost $5. When I turned 18, I went to take the test and was told I failed, but wasn't told which questions I missed. A few months later, I paid another $5 fee, took the test, and was given the same results. I failed. Although I asked, I was not told which questions I missed that time either. There were 68 questions on the test. For instance, for security, each state has a right to Form A, and then there's a blank. And who passes laws dealing with privacy? Now I know the first answer is militia, and the second answer is Congress. But how was I supposed to know that at 18 if I was never taught that? Due to an unjust law, I never got the opportunity to vote in my home state of Alabama. In October 1963, my family moved to Albany, New York. Once again, I did the unexpected. After voting for the first time without having to take a test in the Democratic election that November, I let the $5 bill that was palmed in my hand by an election official fall to the floor. I felt insulted by the practice and refused to participate. The privilege of voting is monumental. It gives us the opportunity to participate in local, state, and national government. It allows us to use our voice at the highest levels of government. It is important for everyone who is old enough to be a registered voter. and to use that vote to bring about the change we want to see happen in our communities. Each election is important. We must go to the polls and vote at each and every election, every year, every time. Our votes show elected officials have power. And yes, one vote counts, but we must be consistent. So here I am today, able to share with you and encourage you to persevere, to always listen to that inner voice that is there to guide you into the right direction. Although I was in the midst of history and witnessed what was going on, I was unaware of the significance until much later in life. To this day, Rosa Parks is my shero. Her actions taught me that even in the face of fear and retribution, one person can indeed make a difference. On December 1st, 1965, she sat down to stand up, and the entire community helped to change an unjust law forever. Rosa Parks was the catalyst, but the Montgomery bus boycott was about a community coming together to change history. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King gets a lot of credit, but behind the scenes, hundreds of dedicated citizens in Montgomery, both Black and white, worked thousands of hours staying off the buses for 381 days until justice was done. Now that's unbelievable. We owe it all to the grassroots workers such as Mr. E.D. Nixon, who brought forth the idea to have a one-day bus boycott and convinced Dr. King and Reverend Abernathy to help. So much has changed in our society since I was a teenager. As young people today, you have the ability to sit, stand, and walk wherever you want, and do and be whatever you choose, no matter the color of your skin. Of course, there's still racism, sexism, ageism, and a host of other isms we face. But what we've learned from history is that one person can make a difference. You just need the courage to take that first step. There are no limits to your ability to seek to succeed. If you can dream it, you can achieve it. The advances in social media allows us access to everything we need to know. We can travel the world and interact with others without ever leaving home. Take today as a prime example. We are sharing time together via Zoom. There are so many other mediums available to us that seem to take control of our attention, but we should always use them to our advantage. How, you might ask, do we maneuver through a maze of information that tries to control our attention? You see, you do so by doing your own research to find the truth about things that are important in your life and in your community. You are all gifted with vivid imagination that can move you in any particular direction you choose to go. As youth today, you must learn to separate fact from fiction. Use media platforms available today to your advantage. It is a fact that there are serious flaws in our history, and some of it is ugly and disturbing. However, in order to be the great country that we want to be, we must know the truth and accept the truth about our history in order not to repeat the injustices of the past. So I encourage you to look for ways to learn the truth and use your skills to make sure that injustices are not repeated. In our current society, there has been a spike in hatred toward our fellow citizens. New laws are being written and approved to make life more difficult for some in our country, especially voting rights. The Supreme Court seems to be becoming partisan and political. In the United States of America today, we must all become vigilant in our continuing effort to prevent injustices in this new age. Future lawyers and, future lawyers and community leaders must prepare to fight vigorously against the new Jim Crow. This morning has been an awesome opportunity for you to see, hear, and experience a special civics education. Most people will never have an opportunity such as this. So take heed, listen, and question, engage your senses and your creativity as never before, and dare to be all you can be in spite of your current situation. Find that cause that piques your curiosity, that agency that needs more volunteers, that person or group that will grow and prosper with your help. Get out there and serve your community. Be the change you are looking for. As you go forward in life's journey, remember, there are two cards you must have in your possession: a library card to give you free access to unlimited knowledge, and a voter registration card that gives you access to your one vote and allows you to be a part of the solutions in our country. Remember, there will always be people who will criticize you, but know that you can rise above any adversity as you continue to study, create, research all things to find the truth. Your light will shine to blot out the darkness that tries to control our lives. Hard work and perseverance will prevail, and you will be victorious. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Ms. Stokes. So now we're going to move into the Q&A portion of our time. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to send them in the chat to Camille.
Okay, so the first question that we've received is, how concerned are you about voter suppression today?
Oh, I'm very concerned. I think about it every day when I read the news and read the newspapers and listen to what's going on and how things are being rolled back. Things that we fought for so many years ago and so many people died. And in fact, to get us the opportunity to vote, it's just so depressing. And so what I try to do is work with agencies that help to teach people the importance of voting, and like the League of Women Voters and the NAACP. Those are two of my favorite groups that I work with. And we try to get to the community and let them know that you have to register, and you must register, and you must vote. You can't just register, you got to get up and go out and vote. Whatever obstacles they put in our way, we must jump over them, crawl around them, go around them, do whatever we need to do, and encourage people to vote.
Thank you. Our next question is, have you kept in touch with anyone you participated in the civil rights movement with?
Not really. Actually don't remember a whole lot of names, but the other day I got to, not the other day, a few weeks ago, I did a book study on Stride Toward Freedom, a book about that Dr. King wrote. And as I read that book, it just brought back so many memories, and it helped me to remember some of the people because their names were in the book. And but no, haven't kept in touch with any of those people.
All right, so the next question that we received is, what gave you the strength and resilience to continue in the face of unrelenting racism and oppression?
I think that even now, I just turned 83 years old, January 6th. And I'm still angry. And I think my anger helps me to continue to fight for justice, that's a place to use the anger. You don't go out fighting physically, but you do things in order to change the rules and regulations so that you can live a decent life in America.
Thank you. Our next question is, was it difficult at times to remain nonviolent during the boycott?
Oh yeah. It's always difficult when somebody is hitting you or pushing you down or carrying on, but because the training that that people got, it was difficult, but you did it. You struggled with it, you did it, and you moved forward. In fact, the work that I did was not in terms of being out there in the streets. I was inside doing different things. So I didn't actually march or do any of those things. I did things inside the building. But yeah, and then I have to say this to you. Nonviolence works because it allows people to think about what they're doing to you. If you don't retaliate, then it somehow touches their hearts and allow them to know that they shouldn't do what they're doing to you because of it. Well, that's just what I think. It could be different.
All right, next question is, did you find New York to be significantly different from Montgomery, or was racism and discrimination still as prevalent?
I didn't understand that question.
Did you find New York to be any different from Montgomery in regards to the racism and discrimination?
Well, different to a degree, but there's a lot of things that went on in upstate New York when I moved here that reminded me of living in Montgomery, Alabama. And the housing conditions and the redlining and those kinds of things that people weren't allowed to do. It was like, it wasn't visible to the naked eye, but it was like institutionalized racism that still exists in our country right now. It's written in the laws, and people switch and choose and change the laws every time. It seems like when Black people make advances, the laws are changed to try to push us back.
All right, so our last question for today is, if it was possible, what have you done differently as a young African American?
Well, actually, I'm not sure if I would have done anything differently because things were stacked against me from my birth. I grew up, my parents were very poor. We lived in a very poor neighborhood. I had much of nothing. As I said in the presentation, I never even had a new outfit until I was 12 years old. And so, that's how poor we were. So the struggle just continued, and I watched what other people were doing in terms of moving forward in order to make adjustments so that I could move forward and have a better life for myself.
Okay, everyone, let's give Miss Nell Stokes one last round of applause.
Thank you.
Because we're on Zoom. Thank you everyone for coming. The Black Student Alliance is so grateful for all of you for being attentive and tuning in and just listening with open minds and open hearts. So you do have extra time to participate and discuss the questions that we've sent to your advisors. So feel free to engage in that. And thank you for coming. Thank you, Ms. Stokes, so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
And lastly, can we please end with a moment of silence? Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Mrs. Stokes, we'd love to stay with you on the Zoom for a moment, just so that we can say goodbye to you. Folks are going to log off, but we just want to check in with you before you go.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
I don't know if there's anything you want.
Hi, Mrs. Stokes. I just want to thank you so much for that presentation. Thank you for sharing that with our students. It was very moving. I had 1,000 questions, but I wanted the kids to ask. Really, living through that, I can't imagine. And what you have done, for people like me and people like our students here, it's things that we don't acknowledge and are grateful for. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure. And if you have a question that you want to ask me now, it's okay. I have nowhere to go and nobody to go there with. So I'm free for the rest of the day.
I watched the Emmett Till story. What was it? It was called Women Moving Forward, something, I forget the name.
Right.
And all the things you said were right in there, like walking on the sidewalk when you see a white person, people going missing, bodies turning up, no one being held accountable.
Right.
And I'm amazed. I don't understand, I guess, why Black people stayed in the South, even to this day.